Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News Explosion.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Tim's News Explosion on this Monday, the 6th of November, 2023. We are live on the Wilmsfront YouTube channel, the Wilmsfront Odyssey channel, and the Wilmsfront Rumble channel. Also back live on Entropy, where you can send through a super chat donation, which I will read out. Hello to everyone in the chat, Paleoconservative Australian, Senator Slayer, and Paleoconservative Australian. Good to see you all. It is 9 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria, where it is Melbourne Cup Eve. I didn't fancy dressing up again. I don't have a horse outfit or a silly hat. It's called the Race That Stops the Nation, but tomorrow there will be the Reserve Bank meeting that stops the nation. So at 2:30 tomorrow, just before the Flemington race, the Reserve Bank will meet, and the money is on. The bookies have bet that there will be a 0.25% increase in interest rates. The new Reserve Bank Governor, Michelle Bullock, she has said previously that she's very bullish about needing to increase interest rates to get inflation to its 2 to 3% target. For their target year of 2025. And of course, as interest rates continue to go up, but inflation is still not tamed. That means that Anthony Albanese, his poll numbers and personal approval ratings continue to go down. The news poll last night had the two-party preferred Labor at 52, the coalition at 48. Anthony Albanese is at -10 popularity at the moment, negative. And there was the Redbridge poll, which it was slightly higher, 53.5% to Labor, 46.5% to the coalition. Since the Voice campaign begun, and then following its defeat, the poll numbers continue to go south. At the moment, it doesn't look like, that Peter Dutton and the Liberals would form government, but that Labor might be forced into a minority government. Of course, with Melbourne Cup Day tomorrow, there are all those men and women who come in and dress to impress, but at the end of the day, end up embarrassing themselves by getting blind drunk and collapsing on the grass. Now, tomorrow, being drunk in public will be legal. So the former Andrews government, I've got to say, obviously it's still the Labor government, but it's now the Allen Labor government. They decided to scrap public drunkenness as an offence after a recommendation of a panel after the death of an Aboriginal woman in custody, Tanya in 2017, when she was drunk. So they obviously the police put her in the cell and she died from blows to the head, which looks like she was banging her head against the cell. Obviously, in Victoria, when something bad happens to an Aboriginal like that, that's when the Andrews government, the Labor government, I should say, leaps into action. And now the Labor government, state Labor government, is planning a total of 10 sobering up centres to open up. But 9 of the 10 will only be for the exclusive use of Aboriginal people, which doesn't that seem like they're perpetuating a racist stereotype that Aboriginal people can't handle their drink? There's only going to be one sobering up centre which is going to be open to all races, and that's the one in Collingwood. So that is not going to be ready in time for tomorrow, but they promise that it will be ready by the end of the month. So obviously Collingwood is next to North Richmond. That's where the drug injecting facility is. Now, the Liberal opposition, their opposition police spokesman, Brad Batten, he called for the change in the law to be delayed. And he teamed up with this local Karen, Sherry Harold, and because Co-Health, which is a charity, they're going to be running the Sobering Up Centre. There's 20 places there, and they'll pick up people in these white vans with Co-Health branding. And so what Brad Batten posed with this Sherry Harold, they got a van and put a fake Co-Health label on it, and so claiming that. So this is what he said. For years, we've taught people about stranger danger. Now we're saying when you're drunk, it's okay to get into white vans. Although Brad Batten rejected that he was that his stunt could incite people to impersonate health workers. I mean, and a co-health spokesman said, like other health services that operate out of community, our public intoxication health workers will have official ID and uniforms which identify them. Obviously, there have been cases in the past of people impersonating police officers. I thought this was a pretty silly stunt. I mean, is somebody going to go to that much effort to put a fake logo on a van there so they can pick up drunks? I mean, that's a bit far-fetched there. So tomorrow, like, it'll be the same as every year. I mean, the media have said, oh, it's coming in on the one of the biggest public drinking days of the year. Yet in the past, I mean, if they in past years when there've been drunk people at the races, I mean, if they arrested and threw in the cells everyone who was publicly drunk at the races on Melbourne Cup Day, there'd be no cells left. And obviously, we at the same time as this is coming in. So Victoria Police are cutting down the opening hours of 43 police stations during off-peak times to increase their frontline staff. Obviously, Victoria Police, it wasn't a great recruitment ad during lockdown when they were choking women, pepper spraying grannies, arresting pregnant women in their home. I mean, obviously, sadists would still apply. And then if there's also the jab mandates. DML says most in Victoria Police are impersonating police officers. Well, they're attempting to impersonate good police officers, you could also say. And there's also said, technically, it's the Allen government, but it's still the Andrews government, just a coat of cheaply made, overpriced paint. Well, it's still the same policies, but just Jacinta Allen is a nicer face than a menacing Dan Andrews. Now, moving on to Anthony Albanese. He is currently, as we speak right now, in China, meeting with Chinese dictator Xi Jinping. And Anthony Albanese, I can't remember the exact wording that he's using, but he's, restoring, repairing, or stabilizing relations. That's the word that he's using. And they've all got these talking points. The Albanese government ministers, he's over there with Trade Minister Don Farrell, is that we can work together with China where we can, disagree where we must, and engage in our national interests and not compromise our values. And Anthony Albanese, remember he said that he wouldn't just pose for photo ops or disappear when the going gets tough. That exactly is what he has been doing. So since the defeat of his voice referendum, he's been to the White House for a state dinner with Joe Biden. Then he was back in Victoria, where he toured the Bundaberg Beer Factory in Queensland, because Anthony Albanese hasn't drunk and promoted enough beer. And then he was at the Darrell Lea factory as well. And it seems that Anthony Albanese, if he's scoffing all these Darrell Lea licorice all sorts, then I've seen the photos of him and drinking all that beer. He's put all the weight back on that he lost when he was opposition leader. And then his photos from China is about, well, getting them to buy beef, lobster, and wine again. And I know, is he trying to impersonate? Are they trying to impersonate Jordan Peterson there with their lobsters? And of course, he's got the wine there. I mean, if this isn't just cringe photo ups, I don't know what is. And then going through all of the alcohol there as well. I mean, please give me a break. Now, while Anthony Albanese was over in China last week, opposition leader Peter Dutton was in India with his shadow minister for community safety, migrant services, and multicultural affairs. Some might say that shadow portfolio is contradictory and oxymoron. And so Peter Dutton kept us updated on his, shall we call him Delhi Dutton now? So this was some of his social media highlights. Australia and India share a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and our bond continues to grow stronger with expanding economic security and social ties. A strong relationship means a greater Indian interest in Australian agriculture, resources, and tourism. It is a great pleasure to speak about our shared values with business leaders and entrepreneurs in India, with the India-Australia Strategic Alliance in New Delhi. And he and Jason Wood also donned some turbans. I don't know, they're not really extravagant turbans there. When Tony Abbott went to India, he made a decent effort of it. They're both bald men, so they're probably just glad that they could have the opportunity to cover their baldness. And now back in May, when Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi came, and Anthony Albanese hosted him at what's it called? Kudos Bank Arena, which is the Sydney Superdome. And he called Narendra Modi the boss. Peter Dutton was there in the audience, smiling and cheering on. And that is when Anthony Albanese and Narendra Modi signed a number of agreements. So there was the mechanism for mutual recognition of qualifications, and also there was the India-Australia Migration and Mobility Partnership. So that outlined, it was 10 pages long, new options for visa applicants to extend or apply for visas to boost labour mobility for students, graduates, academics, professionals, and short stay arrivals. And I'm not sure if you've seen that time graph from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, that India, it is now the second highest migration group to Australia. The first is still England, and we certainly like our English and British migrants here, such as Dawn Browning. I'm not sure if Lady of Shalott has joined the chat. Her newfound fame has quite taken off, which I'll get to. And now Peter Dutton, he posted to his own social media a speech bragging about all the Indian visas that he had granted over the years.
For 7 years, I was Australia's Minister for Immigration and then Home Affairs. During those years, Indian migration to Australia blossomed and our diaspora grew. Between 2015 and 2022, Indian temporary visa holders increased from around 140,000 to 283,000. An average of more than 32,000 Indians migrated permanently to Australia each year, and more than 209,000 Indians became Australian citizens. Tellingly, the number of Australians with Indian ancestry today numbers more than 780,000, some 164,000 more since the 2016 census, something of which I'm incredibly proud. In that financial year, more than 100,000 visas were granted to Indians to study in Australia, a great outcome for the individuals and a great outcome for our two countries. Indeed, there is a strong bipartisan support between the two major political parties in Australia when it comes to nurturing migration with India. When Prime Ministers Modi and Albanese met in Sydney in May, they finalised a migration and mobility partnership agreement. That arrangement will facilitate a greater two-way flow of students, of graduates, of academics and business people. It's an initiative I welcome wholeheartedly.
Now, the reason why both Albanese and Dutton, we now have this bipartisan Indian mass migration program to Australia is geopolitics, because obviously we saw in the last term of the Morrison government with first the Chinese Communist Party takeover of Hong Kong, and then of course the spread of COVID-19 from the People's Republic of China, that the now naturalized Chinese migrants into Australia, many of them still have loyalties to the CCP, and the CCP through propaganda and through front community groups are able to sort of activate the Chinese diaspora here as basically sleeper agents, and the CCP doesn't do overt basic of espionage and subversion of Western nations. It does it quite sinisterly, and so there was obviously a change by the major parties. Okay, it's a communist dictatorship that is hell-bent on world domination, and also it is wanting to avenge the century of humiliation. It has a colonial chip on its shoulder. And so let's pivot to India, which is a democracy. It doesn't have a colonial chip on its shoulder. We both play cricket. You remember last year, Australia hosted the 2022 ICC T20 World Cup, and one of the games between India and Pakistan, there was 95,000 attending at the MCG, almost a full house there. But thankfully, there wasn't a riot afterwards like there was in the British city of Leicester after India and Pakistan cricket game. Now, obviously, I've said this before, that although, because I disagree with what Kos Samaras said, and also what Joel and Blair, they seem to agree, just take whatever Kos Samaras says at face value, but I'm sure that's their own opinion. They do believe that Indians do have a animosity towards colonialism, but why do they play cricket, which is the English game? And I've previously said that they spend more time fighting each other, the different ethnic religious groups. Obviously, early this year in Melbourne, we had the mini riot at Federation Square opposite Flinders Street when Sikh separatists held their fake referendum to have a separate Khalistan state in the Punjabi region, and Hindu nationalists showed up and there was a brawl that ensued. And when Modi came for his visit in May, he was followed by Sikh separatist protesters. And we saw recently that Canadian and Indian relations have been strained after India Justin Trudeau accused the Indian government of being behind the assassination of a local Sikh separatist leader. Fellow Conservative Australian Modi openly says he wants Indian immigrants in all Anglo-speak country. Obviously, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, he was born in the UK, but he is of Indian ethnicity. He is married to an Indian who is not a British citizen. Fellow Conservative Australian, remember when Albo met Modi, he was hugging him, laughing and calling him the boss in front of 40,000 Indians in Western Sydney. Welcome to Australia. And obviously we with the migration Ponzi scheme, which all governments, Labor and Liberal, have done over the past 30 years. I mean, it's the only thing that is keeping Australia out of recession at the moment. We're in a per capita recession, but no, GDP is still in positive territory because of all the mass migration that we're told it's just catch up after COVID. But the Albanese government, they're supposed to release this infrastructure review, which recommends pausing and cancelling some infrastructure projects. And I'm like, if we're getting all these extra migrants, we're going to need more roads, more rail, more other community services. Because it's argued that this feeds inflation, because post-COVID there is a building shortage, and the skill shortage has just gotten worse as well. So we're just going to keep having the people coming in, and all the roads, all the roads and rail the same. Though I'm in the city of Casey now, where a lot of Indian migrants are settling, and no matter how many roads they duplicate, the traffic is still horrendous in that area. And obviously, the one of Dan Andrews, his last signature policies was the big housing build, which is to build up low, medium, high density. But it tends to be the Asians who prefer to live in those apartment towers, where Indians, they like to come here and actually live in a 4-bedroom, 1-story house. Like a lot of like I mentioned, the city of Casey, a lot of them are out in the city of Hume, the city of Wyndham, and also I think the city of Whittlesea. So there's a lot of Indians having new homes built out there. A lot of the victims of the Porter Davis collapse, where they had their houses first built, were Indians. And obviously the Asian migrants, they tend to run businesses that have a specific Asian bent. So obviously Chinese restaurants, Chinese massage parlors, while Indian workers, they take a lot of, their workers are spread all out. The low, medium, and high skilled professions. There's a lot of Indian doctors now. There's a lot of at the medium skilled. They're in the construction and trades now, and at the lower level, cleaners, security guards, obviously call center, 7-Eleven workers, Uber delivery drivers. So they're present at all levels of the employment levels. And also in terms of, obviously, Dutton and Albanese, they believe that Indian migrants integrate better than what I referred to before, the CCP sleeper agents. Though the Asian migrants, including the Chinese migrants, they tend to they tend to be more open to relationships and starting families with white people who've been here for generations, while the Indians, they still have an in-group preference. Obviously, there are still arranged marriages that go on. Obviously, you can post in the chat. I mean, I see plenty of Asian couples. Obviously, a lot of them are white male, Asian female, though there are a lot of white females and Asian males now, though you don't see too many white women with Indian men, or Indian men or Indian women with white men. I saw that Joel and Blair, they were strategizing how to try and turn people against Indian immigration, and some of their strategies that they put forward is they smell and that they're sex pests. I know that there's a channel that's been set up on Telegram by some white nationalists, probably NSN affiliates, Indian Invasion Exposed. It looks to be run by the same people who run the Aboriginal Voice Exposed channel, and highlights all of these stories. Now, I've worked with many Indians over the years, and they've all been diligent workers and putting in an honest day work. So it is like with white workers. I mean, it is a mixed bag. You get some good ones and get some bad ones, but it is going to, no matter what Dutton and Albanese say, a mass Indian migration, it is going to change Australia. A lot of them are going to bring their grievances here with us. Now, interesting, at our political leaders level, it's still a predominant. Our politicians are still predominantly white, which people like former Race Discrimination Commissioner Tim Pomasani believe is a bad thing. And the First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, I'm not sure if you've seen that video of him. He's not happy that there's so many white leaders still in Scotland. Though our political, obviously, Penny Wong is the most high-profile non-white we have in our government, so though she speaks like a white lady, basically. We did have a mass intake of non-white MPs at the last federal election, including here in Victoria. There were two Sri Lankans elected to the lower house in Victoria, both for the Labor Party. There was Cassandra Fernando in my electorate of Holt. So she's not related to Rukshan Fernando, or my co-founder of the Unshackled, Sukath Fernando. That's a common Sri Lankan name. And then there is in Higgins, Dr. Michelle Anajaraja. She is a Tamil Sri Lankan, and because she's representing a seat with a high Jewish population, she's also very pro-Israel Zionist as well. Now, the supposed assimilationist Prime Minister of Australia, John Howard, he was viciously attacked as a racist in the 80s for suggesting that the rate of Asian migration be slowed. He was in London this past week as a speaker of Jordan Peterson's Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, and was interviewed on that warrior conservative network, GB News, the home of free speech, common sense. I'm being sarcastic as well. And this is what he said about, he never really liked multiculturalism and believed in assimilation.
Well, separately from this issue, I have my doubts about multiculturalism. I believe that when you migrate to another country, you should, as far as reasonably, be expected to absorb the mainstream culture of that country. Sure, retain your affection for Greece or Italy or wherever you may have come from, and we've been very successful. I mean, I constantly meet people whose ancestors came to Australia from Greece and Italy and Germany and the Baltic countries immediately after, or more recently from China and India. The most widely spoken foreign language in Australia now is Chinese.
Yes.
There are 1.4 million Australians of Chinese heritage. Now, that all works well. It largely works well, I think, because people are attracted to the foundation mainstream culture of Australia, which is open and tolerant, but also very proud of what our country has achieved. And I think if we put more emphasis on what our nation has achieved and what the Western world has achieved, and we're less apologetic and less inclined to say, oh, we're all to blame, the better we would be.
Has the recent rise in anti-Semitism, not just in the UK, but also in Australia, surprised you, John?
In Australia, I don't find a lot of anti-Semitism. I really don't. And I mean, the Jewish community is small, but very proudly Australian, and some of our greatest historical figures, without any doubt our greatest.
But you will have seen reports in the UK of the chanting of "From the River to the Sea."
Oh, look, we've had some absolutely unacceptable. I mean, that demonstration outside the Sydney Opera House was shameful. I mean, people saying "gas the Jews," and that was a deliberate invocation of the Holocaust, which was the most foul deed in human history. 6 million people gassed to death because they were Jewish. Now, that is something that we should all be offended by. But having said all of that, I don't think the average Australian is anti-Semitic, and there are some anti-Semitic, just there are some who years ago were anti-Catholic or anti-Protestant. I mean, it's just... But I do think that this latest operation in the Middle East has brought out the double standards for a lot of the world. People have got to understand that the only way you will get lasting settlement in the Middle East is for there to be a full acceptance of Israel's right to exist behind secure, defensible boundaries. Now, until the entire Arab world does that, it's going to be very difficult, in my opinion, to see a lasting settlement.
See, John Howard says that the migrants who come here, they do assimilate, and they come here because they like our values. They're not here because the economic situation is better than over in their own country. And I'll stop speaking in my terrible John Howard accent. But the reason why migrants are attracted to Australia, as I was saying, is because, well, it's a high standard of living here, and because basically with the internet and global connectivity, they don't need to assimilate. In the 21st century, obviously with the scale of immigration and also the fact that they can call home in an instant, a lot of them just... obviously, they work here. They would socialize here, but they still live as the culture from the country that they come. They speak in their own language most of the time, unless, of course, they're working. Obviously, in the past, when there was there was modest mass migration, even from non-white countries, the migrants were forced to assimilate because you could, before the digital revolution, there was limited connectivity back to the home country, and so they were forced to assimilate and integrate into the local population. But there's no longer those barriers there. I remember, I'm not sure if he's still the Grand Mufti of Australia, but he didn't speak English. He had to speak through interpreter. So John Howard was over at the Alliance of Responsible Citizenship. So along with Tony Abbott and Scott Morrison, two other Australian former prime ministers, the prime ministers that helped us get into the current mess that we're in. Apparently, they, along with the rest of the speakers there, are going to give us the solutions now. And also there were former Deputy Prime Ministers John Anderson and Barnaby Joyce, Shadow Ministers Angus Taylor, Andrew Hastie, James Patterson, Jacinta Price, Dan Tehan, Matt Canavan, even Dominic Perrottet was there, and Moira Deeming was there as well. And I saw this write-up on Unity News Network, which has been posting some really spot-on commentary about how those in the intellectual dark web have helped get us in to the current situation the West is in. And so Peterson's ARC Foundation exposed as having the same neocon warmongers behind them. Now, I'm not sure if any of you watched any of the speeches there or Jordan Peterson's remarks, but it never makes any sense to me. It all just goes over my head, but they all clap for him. But I saw him in Melbourne, and it just seemed like he just made it up 5 minutes beforehand. He got up on stage and he's like, I didn't actually know what I was going to talk about, so I'm just going to talk about what it means to believe in God. And he just pontificated for, I think, an hour and a half. And yeah, it was the best part of the night for me was the mingling afterwards. So it's when I first met David Hiscock of the XYZ. I think that's the first time I also met Political Posting Mama. Mariki Rancy, also met Bettina Arndt. She was, well, emceeing the event. But yes, we don't need another talk fest. And as supposedly it's being promoted as the right's answer to the World Economic Forum. Isn't the way to counter your political opponents not to do the same thing as them? It's like, I remember Matthew Wong of Discernible had a show with Monica Schmidt called The People's Project, so opposite of the project. And also, if you call something the people's something, I automatically think of communism. So calling it People's Project, that I never liked that name. That show only was on in 2020. And then Dave Pello, he had a not Q&A program, which, why would you base a show on that? Warfest Q&A on the ABC, which is now hosted by Patricia Karvelis, which, of course, Lady of Shalott, hello again. She triggered Patricia Karvelis, the golden girl, or what is it, golden Les of the ABC. She was retweeted by Patricia Karvelis last week. I think I've still got the tweet, the tweet here. I'll just bring it up. But yes, there was so I'll bring it up again here in case you missed it. So Patricia Karvelis posted, Daily Mail writes story, trolls target me for hours with vile stuff. My family's really proud of me, thanks. And Lady of Shalott tweet replied to her, bet your lesbianism went down like a Zed Zeppelin in the Greek community. Parents must be so proud. And noticed you deleted the tweet, Lady of Shalott. You shouldn't have done that, because that makes it look like that you've regretted your tweet. I mean, you were subject to quite the massive pylon there. When I saw that, in the morning, I was like, wow, a viewer of my show got retweeted by Patricia Karvelis. She's famous now. I know that Dawn Browning, another regular viewer, also got famous in Rolling Stone magazine with her Ban the ADL cake being featured. And Lady of Shalott, she triggered Patricia Karvelis and her employers at the ABC so much that they released a statement in support of her. So this was put by the ABC News director, Justin Stevens. ABC journalist and presenter Patricia Karvelis is a fine, principled journalist and a courageous and generous human being. We're proud she works for the ABC and grateful for her hard work and huge contribution to the national public broadcaster and audience. It is disturbing, saddening, and angering that Patricia should find herself the target of online trolling and abuse, much of it sexualized, homophobic, and racist, just for speaking publicly about her life. For a major national media outlet to compound that abuse by publicizing it and publishing personal photos to illustrate it is irresponsible and unjustified. That was referring to the Daily Mail article, which didn't mention Lady of Shalott's tweet, by the way. As the e-safety commissioner says, that Julie M. Grant, journalists are more likely to experience online abuse who are female, from diverse racial or social backgrounds, are younger, have a disability, or identify as LGBTQ+. It can have a devastating professional and personal impacts. It can lead to the silencing of journalists, with some self-censoring, retreating from covering certain topics, or leaving the industry. Media outlets should be combating dangerous online abuse and gender-based sexual bullying and standing in solidarity with peers experiencing, not disingenuously serving to amplify it. Yes, shame on you, Lady of Shalott. And the ABC, they decided to, because they've already given her, as well as the host of Radio National Breakfast, which she actually took over from another ABC lesbian, Fran Kelly. She also hosts, Patricia Karvelis with Fran Kelly, the Party Room podcast. So two ABC lesbians have a podcast together. So yeah, she's got the radio gig now 4 days a week, and the Party Room podcast. She's also the host of Q&A now. And on Sunday, they gave her the in-studio guest hosting of Insiders, because David Spears was in China covering Anthony Albanese's visit. So she was the in-studio host. So they're just giving her endless shows on the ABC now. And obviously her bias during the Voice referendum was the absolute worst. Her questions to Warren Mundine on the Voice referendum night were disgraceful. Lady of Shalott says her supporters are nuts. They are wishing me dead whilst wringing their hands about the state of Twitter. No self-awareness that they too are contributing to the very state on Twitter. I was gutted not to make the Daily Mail. Then she should have shut up about being a lesbian. Nobody actually cares what her private life is, but most journalists keep their private life private. I know that some people thought that her, I don't know, partner or wife it looked like Eminem, short-haired blonde lesbian. And during COVID, she thought it was romantic that they rat tested each other. Is apparently some kinky lesbian thing that they like to do. Pico's Man says, so we can expect yet more hate speech legislation to come from this. So while the Allen Labor government, they have been working on expanding the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act to cover sexuality, gender identity, age, disability, gender. They say they need to draft it properly. But according to the Greens, it's urgent so that the opponents of drag queen storytime can be silenced. But Devere Abramovich, he is not satisfied with the way the current Racial and Religious Tolerance Act is being enforced. Neither is Jeremy Liebler. Here they were both again featured on a 9 News report.
Victoria Police has refuted claims by some Jewish community leaders that they have been turning a blind eye to hate speech and offensive slogans. Police say they always enforce the law where it is appropriate. Amber Johnston explains.
Displays like this have just been outlawed in Victoria, a move welcomed by many Jewish leaders, but some say more needs to be done.
Anti-Semitism and neo-Nazism is spreading like wildfire throughout Melbourne, and the Jewish community justifiably is on edge.
The Zionist Federation of Australia has raised concerns about chants at rallies and pro-Palestine protests. They claim Victoria Police is failing to use an older law, the Racial Religious Tolerance Act, that states a person must not engage in conduct that incites hatred, serious contempt, revulsion or severe ridicule. In a statement, the Federation's president said, "We're concerned that authorities have not taken action. There are laws which should be enforced, but the laws are toothless and can't serve as a deterrence if they're not enforced."
Those chants do not meet the threshold for pursuing a charge under the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act.
The Deputy Commissioner says police enforce the law when appropriate, but the offending doesn't always meet the requirements of the Act.
We've recently put briefs of evidence to the Director for a decision, and we've had that come back that there is insufficient evidence.
Victoria Police says it's always in conversation with the government in regards to legislation, confirming that the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act is currently under consideration for expansion. Devere Abramovich believes police are doing their best, but
They have to send a very clear message. Anybody who engages in anti-Semitism, white supremacism or dehumanizing speech or conduct will be prosecuted.
Amber Johnston, 9 News.
Devere had a new one there. Anti-Semitism and neo-Nazism are spreading like wildfire. I'm not sure if he came up with an analogy because it's pending bushfire season, though shouldn't he use the Australian word? It's spreading like bushfires. Wildfires is an American terminology. And now I think I said last week on The Theorist that Devere didn't pick up and get triggered by my Halloween costume last week, which maybe that's a sign that he's learning to get sucked in to people who directly mock him. I mean, obviously he's got his work cut out for him with these pro-Palestine rallies occurring every week. And I've said previously that Devere, his threshold for displays of anti-Semitism is very low. So he got triggered by posters in the Melbourne CBD of dead Gazan children, and it's this. This is one of the things that annoys me about this war spilling over into our streets. So you have Muslims tearing down posters of the Israeli hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza, but you have some Jewish people who are offended when there's signs and posters that say dead Palestinian children killed by Israel. I mean, Monique Ryan was criticized by some Jewish high school principal because she said that she didn't like all the Gazan civilians being killed. Aren't dead humans dead humans? Like dead civilians dead civilians? Like, shouldn't we have equality of outrage and mourning of dead civilians? No, you're not upset enough about those who were raped and burned by Hamas and taken hostage. You're not upset enough by the dead Palestinian children. You're not calling out what Israel is doing. Like, you have these two hard lines here: the extreme Zionist Israel supporters and the extreme Palestine supporters, which are made up of Muslims, Antifa, and communists. And Devere, he also seems to believe that he's the arbiter of what Jews believe and should be offended by. So he's spent some of this week being triggered and offended by his his fellow Jews. So there was, I think it was the Jews against fascism that which is basically for a long time has just been dormant as Jews against Avi. And so there was some of them outside Richard Marles, the defense minister's office. Sorry, no, they weren't outside. They actually occupied his office. And so De Vere was like, not in my name. These are anti-Zionist, anti-Israel protesters who chained themselves by the neck to a ladder at Defense Minister Richard Marles' electorate office in Geelong. They were arrested, released pending summons relation to trespassing. Now, according to the civic nationalists, all identity politics is bad, but apparently it's bad if Jewish people are critical of Israel or anti-Zionist. There can be diversity of thought amongst Jewish population in Western nations about Israel and Zionism. Now, this was it goes for 2 minutes, footage of those two Jews who chained themselves to a ladder outside Richard Marles' office.
My name's Jem Walsh. I'm a Jewish trans person living on unceded Aboriginal land. I'm here today protesting alongside my Jewish colleagues, First Nation colleagues, people from all different backgrounds and our allies. And we are taking a stand against the Labor Party's inaction on the genocide that is currently being perpetrated against Palestinian people. Shame. Shame. We are horrified at the complicit and explicit support that the ALP has given the Israeli government. They have supported this war politically, they supported this war diplomatically, they support this war materially, and we are disgusted and horrified that this is our so-called representatives, and we say not in our name. Not in our name. My name's Noemi Hutner-Koros. I'm an Ashkenazi Jewish person living on unceded Wurundjeri country, Woiwurrung country. I come from a lineage of Yiddish storytellers, resistance fighters, and we're here at the office of Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence, Richard Marles, who has power and authority to intervene and stop this unfolding genocide from happening. The ALP, in partnership with the coalition, have supported and backed this war, this genocide, economically, militarily, diplomatically. And as Jews living here who are horrified and in grief, in mourning for all of our family everywhere around the world, in Palestine, in Israel, we say, how dare you weaponize our grief and our pain for this war, for this genocide that is murdering and killing thousands of people every week. Shame. Shame. We refuse. We refuse. Could I please speak directly to...
And also another thing about De Vere, only he is allowed to invoke the Holocaust. Other people aren't allowed to invoke the Holocaust for other causes that he disagrees with. He got super offended when unvaccinated people put a Jewish yellow star on their chest which said unvaccinated. He got really triggered by that, saying how dare they invoke the Holocaust, but of course he's allowed to. Now, De Vere, at the end of that Channel 9 story, he said they should all be prosecuted. He got his wish with Jacob Hershnet. He hasn't been he hasn't been formally charged, so Jacob full on expects to be charged. He was when he appeared with Thomas Sewell on the Joel and Blair show. He said that an interview at West Melbourne Police Station, he just basically said no comment. And apparently they had 200 pages of evidence against him. What did they print out? His alleged Nazi salute outside the courthouse in every single angle possible. Is that what it all was? Because that seems a bit excessive there. I mean, if Victoria Police, if they're closing 43 counters in during off-peak times for frontline duties, is that a frontline duty? Printing out 200 pages of evidence to prosecute Jacob Hirschnet for us. It's still a summary offence. Lady of Shalott says Tash Peterson owned him over the egg Holocaust business at Easter. She was great, stayed on message and put De Vere back in his box. Yes, Tash Peterson is that radical vegan who managed to get banned from every restaurant in Perth. De Vere was triggered that she said that this was an animal Holocaust, and she doubled down and said and defended her statement. So we will await to see if Jacob Hirschnet is formally charged. As I said last week, the legislation says that anything that resembles a Nazi salute in public, and the fact that he said "Heil Hitler" while raising his arm does not bode well in his favor there. Now on to crime, real crime report, not hand movement crime. I'm not sure if you've seen this meme. So know your hand movements. Down the bottom, rest, pet dog, pet children, call taxi, 12 months in prison, call waiter. Though, have you seen the Hail Tram signs in Melbourne? Does that look like it could be a Nazi salute, the Hail Tram? And remember, Hail, obviously that is one word in Hail Hitler. Shouldn't it be Stop Tram? I remember there was a Hail bus sign in Adelaide that got investigated because somebody was triggered by the term Hail and raising your arm. But as I was saying, on to actual crimes, and the Beef Wellington mushroom cook in Leongatha, Aaron Patterson, has been charged with 3 counts of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. And so she's been photoshopped into this meme. What's the charge? Cooking a meal, a succulent mushroom meal. So her Leongatha property was raided last Thursday. Then she was taken to Wonthaggi Police Station, which is another town in South Gippsland, where she was held overnight. Then she was at Morwell the next day at the Latrobe Valley Magistrates Court. So she was driven around all around South Gippsland there. And so she was remanded in custody to be held at the Dame Phyllis Frost Women's Correctional Centre in Ravenhall, and she's going to be there until May next year in her next court appearance, unless she applies for bail at the Supreme Court, because police apparently need 20 weeks to analyse her computer that they seized that day. Now, we just assume since the deadly lunch on July the 29th, where Patterson's in-laws, Don Patterson, Gail Patterson, and her sister Heather Wilkinson all died after consuming her beef Wellington. And Heather Wilkinson's husband, Ian Wilkinson, a Baptist pastor, he survived. So you thought the police were just quietly going on with the investigation. I would have thought they would have seized the computer first opportunity that they got, not hang on to it. I mean, they were pretty quick in getting the Fuji hydrator from the tip pretty quickly. That was allegedly used to cook to blend the mushrooms to put into the beef Wellington. Now, 4 of the 5 attempted murder charges, they relate to four occasions where she's alleged to have attempted to murder her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, between November 2021 and July this year. Now, you're sort of thinking that if she's tried to kill him 4 times. Wouldn't he have warned his parents and aunt and uncle, hey, don't go for a meal at her place, she'll try and kill you? Or maybe because they're Christians, they wanted to engage in some sort of Christian forgiveness. Now, a lot of Christian forgiveness, in my opinion, is ill-advised, and I'm not naming any names here, but it's basically well, in this occasion, Christian forgiveness got 3 and 4 of them killed. Ian Wilkinson, he's been discharged from hospital. We hope that he's recovering in private. He was in a coma for for most of that time. Iron Duke says, shocking that someone might have used beef Wellington. Well, it's a perfect dish to, well, because it's a mushroom paste, and obviously I'm not sure if because I'm not sure if you've followed you've close how followed you've how close you followed how mushroom poisoning works. So the death cap mushroom, so you don't begin to feel sick from it until 9 to 12 hours after. It's not like arsenic where the person dies like a couple of minutes after, like you sort of see in those movies. And so, and it's tasteless as well. It's tasteless but deadly. And so maybe her alleged plan is I'll poison them here and they get sick later, and enough time will pass, then they won't connect it to the meal that I cooked, which if that was the case, she thought she was being really cunning there, which obviously made the connection there, and that there were mushrooms in the beef Wellington. Now, she claims that she did get sick from the beef Wellington. Remember that she claims it was an accident. She bought some from the local supermarket and an Asian grocer, even though mushroom suppliers have said that it's impossible for poisonous mushrooms to enter the mushroom supply. Dawn Browning says, where's Dan eating tonight? Anyone know? Now, this has captivated the world, this mushroom case. I got international news alerts for it because it is so peculiar. Poisoning family members with a mushroom dish, and we still don't know the motive. I mean, was it money or something else? And people are digging into Erin Patterson's past. She was once an air traffic controller. For most of her recent life, she was a stay-at-home mother and edited the local newsletter. There was another meme that was going around that friends have gathered around her, started a GoFundMe page. I mean, obviously, it's tragedy that these 3 elderly people have died, but this is how a lot of people cope with unexplained tragedy, is through humor. Now, on to from one alleged killer, alleged a triple murderer, to a convicted triple murderer. So the Frankston serial killer, Paul Denya, Jacinta Allen, she's decided to backflip on her predecessor Dan Andrews' refusal to pass a Pacific law to keep the Frankston serial killer Paul Denya behind bars for life. So he murdered Paul Denya, Elizabeth Stevens, Debbie Freem, and Natalie Russell in Frankston in 1993. Natalie Russell was the girlfriend at the time of now Libertarian Victorian MP David Limbrick. So he's really championed this at the Parliament, because that'd be such a difficult thing for you to go through as a young person. Your girlfriends, like obviously teenagers in love, you're very smitten at the time. A serial killer murder her on the way back from school. Just it'd be horrific. and obviously horrific for all the friends and family of those women. So there will be a specific law to keep him in jail. So Jacinta Allen has justified this backflip on new advice from the Solicitor General. So there's already specific legislation to keep Hoddle Street killer Julian Knight and Russell Street bomber Craig Minogue in jail, and also the legislation will give the power of the Adult Parole Board the power to declare restricted prisoners, meaning they are unable to apply for release between 5 and 10 years after serving the non-parole period of their sentence, and prisoners serving a life sentence will also be restricted from reapplying for parole after their application has been rejected, because Paul Denyer had first parole application rejected, but you could just reapply constantly, and that would put through the families of those murdered women through more trauma. And you may remember that 20 years ago, Paul Denyer claimed that he was Paula Denyer and wanted to transition to become a woman. But this was 20 years ago, and the prison psychologist said, no, you're not really transgender, and so he went back to being Paul Denyer. Though if Paul Denyer claimed he was Paula Denyer now instead of 20 years ago, would the Victorian Labor government grant him his request and put him in a women's prison? Would they put him in the Dame Phyllis Frost prison at Ravenhill there? I mean, who knows? There are men who are now transgender women in prisons in Victoria. DML says, Paula, that's why Dan didn't want to lock him up for longer. Well, that's a conspiracy theory that I had. Maybe Dan Andrews believed that, the reason why she killed those women because he was struggling with his own transgenderism, and maybe would have invited Paula Denyer to read to school children at the drag queen story time. That's just a baseless conspiracy theory that I have there. And we also had in other legal news, we had our High Court rule that when he was Immigration Minister Peter Dutton, he did not. They ruled that the power that he had to strip a convicted terrorist of their Australian citizenship if they hold dual citizenship was unconstitutional. So this disgusting, unapologetic Islamic terrorist Abdul Nasser Ben Brika, who migrated to Australia in 1990 from Algeria, he was only supposed to be on a short-term visitor's visa, but he managed to get his foot in the door and eventually use immigration tribunals to get Australian citizenship. He was arrested in, I think it was 2005, 2006 in an anti-terror raid, and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The coalition government passed laws allowing the immigration minister to strip citizenship from convicted terrorists who have dual citizenships, but the High Court said, this violated the separation of powers. Only the judiciary can have this power, and having faith in lefty judges to strip a convicted terrorist of their Australian citizenship, I don't count on it. So there might be an attempt to redraft these laws. So his sentence has expired, Ben Rika, but he is currently being kept in prison by a order via a control detention order under anti-terror laws that was granted that detention extension by the Victorian Supreme Court. So Benrica previously claimed that in about 2014 he read the work of Islamic scholar that allowed him to put aside the pursuit of jihad in Australia, but Victorian Supreme Court Judge Andrew Tinney described the change of heart as a fabrication. So let's hope that if we can't strip his citizenship, he is kept in jail for the rest of his life. He is a real scumbag, the lowest of the low. Now, we have made the global news in Australia, CNN, on not just on the mushroom poisoning, but we've got a new domestic violence epidemic. So, well, this is actually out of date. It's six domestic violence deaths in 10 days. So, murder of 6 women in 10 days, allegedly by men they knew. And so, according to Adam Bandt, the leader of the Greens, when he's not posting Stand with Gaza, Free Palestine rallies, which looks like that all of Israel is Palestine there, Adam Bandt is posting. I hope I've got it here. I've got too many things here. Here it is here. So 5 women have been murdered in Australia in just 10 days. This violence epidemic must stop. Men must stop murdering women. Men must do far more to stamp out the sex and misogyny that breeds inequality and violence. And people in his Twitter replies asked him the question, what is a woman? Because how can you address this crisis of violence and murder of women if you can't even define what a woman is? And the most high profile murder of a woman is that 21-year-old water polo teacher Lily James at the St Andrew's Cathedral School. So I don't know if you need to say alleged anymore, because Paul Thyssen, who at 24, another teacher at the school who they've been dating for 5 weeks, he murdered her, bashed her in the head with a hammer at the gym toilets, then called the police, and then suicided off a cliff in Vaucluse there. And obviously 2 teachers at a school, one being killed in a murder and 2 dead in a murder-suicide. That'd be horrific for the students. And the principal of the school John Collier, he has come under attack for calling Lily James suspected murderer an absolute delight and not a monster, but he committed a monstrous act. So he was previously the headmaster of the school. He's now the head of all boys Shaw School in North Sydney. And so his comments obviously being construed as well, not being sent. What's that being? I should go here. That here it goes here. So sexual consent advocate Chanel Contos recently gave a National Press Club address about Australian domestic violence epidemic. The idea that Heath Thyssen was a perfect role model of fine student does not mean it's an anomaly that he could murder somebody. She said there was a pervasive culture among private school boys that was being reinforced by the people around them. The whole point is that normal people do these crimes. And this is the by these consent advocates, those proposing the Respect for Relationships program. Look, it was he on the surface appeared as just a normal person. Like, basically the implication is that any man could be a potential murderer of his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend. That's what they're implying there. So even if you think that you have a you should the implication is you should treat every man as a potential abuser there, which is why many men, what is it, Mengtao, men going their own way, because it's just too dangerous to have a relationship with a woman unless you get accused of sexual assault or other or domestic violence offences. Obviously, you only need to look at what's happened to Bruce Lehrman, and obviously, like I said, the problem for these third wave feminists now is that they can't define what a woman is. So how do you address the problem without addressing that basic fact? Although this is probably why they have gone on this strategy of basically through these the aim of these respectful relationship programs is basically to neuter young children. They say it's about breaking down gendered stereotypes, and so it's actually how this gender fluid ideology is, that you basically try you make sure that the boys don't behave like boys naturally do and the girls don't, and it's really warped up in some of the Nordic countries. What is it, they force boys to paint their nails, and it's really messed up there. And Chris Minns, the New South Wales Premier, Cringe Minns as I call him, he announced that New South Wales will become the first state to have a dedicated Women's Safety Commissioner. This role will help us in our mission to eliminate domestic, family and sexual violence. And again, I'd ask Chris Minns, what is a woman? Can you define what a woman is? And Chris Minns, he put the treaty on the back burner. He said that it'd be after the 2027 election, though he's hiring an executive director for Truth and Healing on a $339,000 a year salary, which is being called a voice by stealth. Now, Chris Minns, he's currently undergoing a review of the Sydney Metro West, claiming that it's too expensive. Well, I'll tell you what, if you could afford the Sydney Metro West, if you didn't hire this person, I mean, there's a pretty good racket gravy train if you can get this salary. All you have to be is, well, one of the main qualifications is to be Indigenous, and this is probably why Victoria is so much in debt. I mean, we have the First Peoples Assembly, and Cringe Minns is on the same path here. And so this is why there is so much state and federal government debt through these gravy train positions, identity politics positions. I mean, we should get rid of the human rights commissioners, who are all on federal human rights commissioners are on about $400,000. All right, now let's go over to the UK now, and I noticed that another English British expat has joined us, 99 Iron Duke, and of course English men and women and have no difficulty in assimilating into Australia while they come here. The fact that, well, Australia is, well, they're not a racial minority in Australia like they are in their Indigenous country. Another British expat who's now an Australian patriot, Gary Hume, back where he is. I mean, he said where he is, whites are vastly becoming a minority, and the pro-Palestinian protest, which they're every weekend here in Melbourne and Sydney. They're every week in London, and now those in the intellectual dark web, such as Douglas Murray, he says they should. He wants all the Hamas supporters supported. He sat down with the trigonometry dudes to say this. Of course, he is just a talker and a studio boy, as Katie Hopkins calls them. So he's been profusely tweeting, and also on a media blitz. He's on Rita Panahy's show every Friday night where she fangirls over him. He's the author of groundbreaking work. I know that Andrew Bolt has another I should call them intellectual dark web wankers, basically. Brendan O'Neill from Spiked. I don't think he's ever gotten out of the street either. I don't think Konstantin Kozin, I think he's one of the trigonometry guys. I'm probably mispronouncing it. So Douglas Murray tweeted, I'll try and do it in the voice. UK Hamas supporters now planning a 1 million man march on Remembrance Day. They plan to defame our war dead and desecrate the cenotaph itself. This is a tipping point. If such a march goes ahead, then the people of Britain must come out and stop these barbarians. How was my Douglas Murray impersonation there? He certainly speaks with a pompous voice. At my throat there, impersonating Douglas Murray. Oh yes, certainly Douglas Murray does love Israel, and so does former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. There he is with our former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. And now Boris Johnson, he's retired from the House of Commons now, though we're all still paying Scott Morrison's salary. He's still the member for Cook, so we paid for him to be over at the art conference and then stopped by Israel on the way back. What the hell is he wearing? He's got, what is it, those cargo pants and some coat? I mean, people were joking, did Qantas lose his luggage again? And as Lady of Shalott has hit the nail on the head, Murray won't be the one getting arrested. Stay away from any event he urges you to attend. I've seen Nick Griffin and a lot of other authentic British nationalists say the same thing. That basically you'd be walking into basically a January 6th style trap. I mean, the Met Police would certainly arrest counter protesters that day, and of course, Suella Braverman, she is making her usual empty threats. I mean, like, so she's called the pro-Palestinian protests so far hate marches, and she's vowed that anyone vandalizing the cenotaph must be jailed faster than feet can touch the ground, in which I'm sure that the pro-Palestinian protesters are shaking their boots. Woo! I mean, she is just full of empty threats. I mean, she hasn't sent a single illegal boat migrant to Rwanda, but she's like, well, I'm gonna get you all over this. You hate marchers, yes, you're gonna pay for what you've done. I mean, she is. I didn't think anyone could be worse than Priti Patel as Home Secretary, but she's managed to do it. And Rishi Sunak, he put out a statement addressing because Remembrance Day, or it's called Armistice Day. That's the actual November the 11th, which is also Blair Cottrell's birthday, by the way. So Armistice Day is the November the 11th, and they have Remembrance Sunday, which is the formal events on the day closest to November the 11th. Obviously in Australia, our big Remembrance Day, Veterans Day is Anzac Day, but Armistice Day, Remembrance Sunday is huge in the UK, and it's everyone who is on camera wears a poppy, and even the Premier League
observes it. Remembrance Sunday with a minute's silence. So this is Rishi Sunak's statement. To plan protests on Armistice Day is provocative and disrespectful, and there is a clear and present risk that the cenotaph and other war memorials could be desecrated, something that would be an affront to the British public and those that we stand for. The right to remember in peace and dignity those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for freedoms must be protected. I have asked the Home Secretary's support the Met Police in doing everything necessary to protect the sanctity of Armistice Day and Remembrance Day. Now, yes, I agree. It's incredibly distasteful to have a pro-Palestinian protest on that day, but I am a free speech, free assembly absolutist, and so I do believe that if they're peaceful, they do have the right to protest there. Now, obviously, with the weekly pro-Palestinian protests in London, it's some people say, oh, the invaders have conquered Britain. It's not an invasion if you invite them in. I mean, all of these pro-Palestine Muslim protesters, they were all invited in, and so basically, and it's been bipartisan, a mass migration, multiculturalism by both the Conservative and Labor governments. Though given it is still interesting, because they organised by Antifa Communist a lot of these pro-Palestine marches, but they're mainly attended by Muslims. Billboard Chris, who was in London for ARC, he's called Billboard Chris because he has the billboards against child gender transitions. Some Antifa LGBTQ activists they didn't know how to respond to some pro-Palestine Muslims who don't like their queer agenda.
This guy is trying to propagate anti-LGBTQ propaganda. He's trying to tell children that they are not allowed to be trans.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not. They're not. Suck your mum, bro. You're black nail polish on as a man, bro. Stop talking. Stop talking. In some religions, you can't do that. Yeah, you have to respect that decision. But in religions, yeah. But in some religions they accept that. But in our religion, you can't do that. So we don't agree with your faith. Thank you. What religion are you? What religion are you? Catholic. What are you then? What do you identify yourself as, something, my bro? What do you identify as? Go on. What do you identify as? He doesn't have a religion. What do you identify yourself as? Okay. Yeah, you don't have a... Listen. Wait, where you from? Wait, what do you identify yourself as? Identify yourself as shit, my bro. You don't have to be filming. That's into...
I don't know if the Asian guy with the camera phone was Andy No. So he was there as well and attended Avi Yemeni's London book launch. So there is Avi, Rukshan, Andy No, Ollie London, Billboard Chris, and Rachel Wong of Women's Forum Australia. She was there with Moira Deeming in London. And so it originally got cancelled by the Unheard Club, Avi's book launch. So they used another venue. I'm not sure if Unheard owned the restaurant or they had a booking at that restaurant, but they canceled. So this is what Freddie Sayers of Unheard said. No, actually, we're not. This was a private booking of one of our spaces that came in via the restaurant and we weren't aware of it yesterday. So I don't know if Unheard booked a floor, and so Avi decided to book a table there for his book launch. But it was interesting there. Freddie Sayers of Unheard, which is another one of those intellectual dark web websites, say they didn't want anything to do with Avi Yemeni, it seems. Also, the intellectual dark web in the UK, they're banned from GB News, Talk TV. They certainly weren't invited to the Ark. Katie Hopkins and Tommy Robinson, they are back on Twitter X. They have been reinstated, which is absolutely fantastic. I know that Unity News Network, they allege that this is what they put out. It really is just amazing that both Katie and Tommy have been allowed back on Twitter, almost like there's an agenda at play. Still glad they are back and no one should be deplatformed for their political views. But Tommy Robinson wearing the Mossad shirt and Katie Hopkins wearing I Love Israel shirt, it didn't stop them getting cancelled. In fact, it was the Jewish Board of Deputies which accelerated Katie Hopkins' cancellation when she made her tweet after the Manchester Arena bombing that with regard to mass Muslim migration, we need a final solution. Because she used those words, the Jewish Board of Deputies in the UK demanded her sacking. That's when she was sacked from LBC. Katie Hopkins, she's banned from Fox News, GB News, Talk TV. So that hasn't saved them from being cancelled. If that's what they're implying, I mean, they're pretty much as cancelled as Mark Collette or Nick Griffin, basically. I mean, Nigel Farage will have nothing to do with Tommy or Katie. Of course, as you all know, Katie Hopkins, she was a guest on my show back in 2020, one of the highlights of my Wilmsfront episodes and also my time at the Unshackled. So, and she is also absolutely hilarious. She's got her stand-up tour Infectious and her sketches, which have played many of them on the show. They're absolutely hilarious. Tommy Robinson, I have never interviewed, though he is, well, a best mates with Avi and Ezra Levant, which would probably I don't think I would pass the vetting for an interview. I wonder if Tommy and Katie they will they'll post more frequently now that they're back on Twitter X. It's certainly good to have them back. I mean, Tommy has been very quiet. Well, he has his family to raise as well, so you don't begrudge him that. Another based dissident of the ARC is James Dillingpole. ARC is the new World Economic Forum. I thought this was obvious, but apparently some of our gang have fallen for the deception. It really is very hard, all of these casualties we're taking. By the time we get to the end, there are not going to be many of us left, are there? It'll be like the final hours of days hunting when the field is thinned from 120 to about 5 stalwarts. So you'll be pleased to hear James Dillingpole hasn't been sucked in to the ARC, and neither has David Icke, who, well, he and Unity News are probably the best go-to places for British news. So Keir Starmer, his path to become British Prime Minister at next year's general election. It's got a few problems with it because he is not supporting a Gaza ceasefire because Keir Starmer wants to bury the ghost of Jeremy Corbyn and his pro-Palestinian allies in the Labour Party. So there have been 11 Burnley councillors resigned from the Labour Party over his refusal to back a ceasefire. And so a lot of the Muslims who were planning to vote for Labour at next year's general election might not vote at all. This is why the Albanese Labour government, they are also trying to
they are trying to be more, they're not calling for a ceasefire but a humanitarian pause, and trying to be as sympathetic as they can be to the civilians dying in Gaza, and calling for aid to come in. And also the same things happening in the US with the Muslims in Michigan. They are vowing not to vote for Joe Biden in 2024, which is a swing state. Lady of Charlotte says, Delingpole is always right. Delingpole has denounced Topher Field. Topher is out. It was Topher Field. He was there with the Aussie Wire to cover the Ark, which that would have been an expensive trip. So Topher, as I said, he's comes from libertarian background such as me. He won the Libertarian of the Year award in, was it 2022? Though in 2020, Claire Lehman of Quillette won the Libertarian of the Year award, even though she supported the lockdowns, didn't think that Australia's COVID regime was that bad, loved the vaccines as well. Claire Lehman also, she was big noting her guests at a Quillette social in London with Jordan Peterson. This is the whole thing. Like these talk fests, I mean, they're basically a lot of people want to go just to be in the in crowd, to be in the who's who. I mean, there was another talk fest going on, the Battle of Ideas, which Andrew Doyle of Free Speech Nation on GB News did a special at. That's where he interviewed Moira Deeming. He also plays Titana McGrath. I'm blocked by Andrew Doyle on Twitter. I don't know what I did wrong. But yeah, so this is the Battle of Ideas. I mean, it seems like it's similar to that leftist festival in Australia, Festival of Dangerous Ideas. And then, of course, there's the Oxford, are they Oxford debates or discussions? Because, well, apparently Ben Shapiro, he owned a pro-Palestinian Muslim with this historical argument. I'm not sure if you saw this.
If, based on the numbers, more Germans died than Brits in World War II, did that mean that the British were wrong in World War II? Because they did. Many more Germans died than Brits. Based on the numbers, does that mean that Britain was wrong in World War II?
Britain wasn't bombing civilians.
Yes, it was wrong what the British did, bombing and killing civilians excessively like they did in Dresden and Hamburg. There's that documentary Hellstorm. Obviously, they didn't. There were like the Israelis are accused of doing to the Palestinians in Gaza at the moment, collective punishment. Certainly, the Allies collectively punished the citizens of Nazi Germany for, well, their allegiance to Hitler, and so there was excessive bombing and civilian deaths in Dresden and Hamburg. And remember all the Germans that were expelled and ethnically cleansed after the war from Eastern Europe as well. So Ben Shapiro using that argument, well, the British killed German civilians, so it's okay when we do it. That's not really, like, in my opinion, like, because there's an historical precedent for mass killing of civilians, that's not an argument for the present. Pete Osman says I wasn't expecting a yarmulke. Ben Shapiro always wears it because he wears a black one and his hair is jet black. It blends in to his hair there. Now I'm almost getting back to the end of the show. So I mentioned the pro-Palestinian protest in the United States. In fact, there was I showed the pro-Palestinian insurrection in the at the US Capitol last week. This week, there was an insurrection outside the White House. Have I got the footage here? I'm not sure if I've got the footage. No, I don't think I have the footage, but I've got the article here over at Alex Jones's Infowars. So Ali Akbar, fuck Joe Biden in rage. Pro-Palestinians gather outside the White House. They rattled the White House gates. So imagine if they were MAGA Republicans. Another insurrection. Yeah, this just and here they are scaling the fest here. So yes, apparently that is not a threat to national security, but when MAGA Republicans are there, then that's super scary domestic terrorists. We need the FBI to go and hunt them down. Now, also Germany. So their federal government, they have announced their Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, has announced plans to deport on a grand scale. And CDU opposition leader Friedrich Merz has accused Berlin neighborhoods of not being adequately German, as demanding new immigrants to Germany declare their allegiance to Israel. Left-wing German politician Sarah Wagen Kench. There shouldn't be any neighborhoods where natives are in the minority. Joachim Stamp from the Liberal Free Democratic Party has said that Germany must finally make progress on repatriation agreements with non-EU countries. The Green Party co-chair Ricardo Lang said the government must act to avoid more and more people arriving. And the German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier has warned Germany is at breaking point as 162,000 people applied for asylum in the country within the first half of the year. Even the widely respected former German president Joachim Gauck has criticized the current government and called for more radical solutions to curb the number of asylum seekers. So, I mean, if that's what it takes to deport migrants from Germany, if they don't declare their allegiance to Israel, I'll take it. I mean, if that's the tipping point, I'll take it. But the German police union says no. This can't be done. So they're the head of the German police union has said it would take more than 80 years to deport 50,000 people who are compulsory deportable to their home countries. At the same time, millions more would have arrived here. Where's the German? As some of the commenters said, where's the German efficiency there? And well, if we want to go back the clock 80 plus years, I mean, Nazi Germany could certainly move more than 50,000 people across the European continent at any one time. So I don't see how the German police union can claim that can't be done. I mean, that just seems like a cop-out, or unless they're scared of because the Met Police are certainly scared of the Muslim pro-Palestinian protesters there. And that's what I think's at play here. Now, in final news, Sam Bankman-Fried, he has been found guilty of a fraud and money laundering on all 7 counts, and could face over 100 years in prison. And he got a very flattering court sketch. So drew him basically as, I don't know, Zac Efron, basically there, not as the fat short Afro kid. I was trying to search whether somebody would claim that finding Sam Bankman-Fried guilty now is inappropriate, since there's so much anti-Semitism at the moment. But certainly I believe that he'll be sentenced to over 100 years, because he probably knows stuff. I wonder if he'll be suicided in prison there, because certainly, remember, he was all the besties of the Clintons and CNBC, what's his name, Jim Cramer, new JP Morgan. So glad to see. Good grief, he'll play Sam in the film. I don't know, maybe Jonah Goldberg. I mean, he's a bit old now. He used to have that sort of afro when he was younger. Yes, as soon as you're nothing, you've got no friends. I mean, I remember when Sam Dastyari, Shanghai Sam, was exposed, the Labor Party dropped him like that, and he lost everything. He lost his marriage. He's inactive on social media now. He lost everything. I mean, when you're no longer valuable, you're cast aside. All right, gone well over time again. That's all for now. Now, remember, if you don't want to send through super chats, you can take out an Unshackled membership at the unshackled.net/membership. Bronze $5 per month, silver $10 per month, gold $25 per month, platinum $50 per month. So, and also, I will see you all on The Theorist tomorrow night with Andy Nolch, 9 p.m. on The Theorist YouTube channel. I will post The Theorist link into the chat. And for once, I am going to explore some historical conspiracy theories. I'll give you a hint. I've been watching the White House Plumbers, that HBO show. And who killed Howard Hunt's wife, Dorothy Hunt, in a mysterious plane accident there? We'll discuss that tomorrow night. I'll see you there, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. More reports from Tiger Mountain with Richard Wollstonecroft later in the week. And remember the unshackled.net, our Unshackled Productions archive, and also for our articles as well. I will see you all tomorrow night. In the meantime, it's really warm for Cup Day tomorrow. So if you're in Melbourne, make sure you stay cool. There is this thing called water. If you don't drink it, you will feel dehydrated and could faint from heat stroke. Put some sunscreen on, otherwise you'll burn like a tomato. Slip, slop, slap. And but most importantly, enjoy the good weather, because it's about time we had some. I hope all you British expats, you like our summers now instead of what is it? Britain is more like Iceland sometimes. Pardon the pun there. So enjoy the summer. I'll be enjoying the sunshine tomorrow, and I'll see you all tomorrow night.
Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's